of the Verona Borough Council for July 30th, 2019. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mr. Kenna.
President Drabicki Bell.
Here.
Mr. Conti. Here. Dr. Carpenter.
Present.
Ms. Lualbo.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy. Here. Ms. Provenza is not here yet. Mr. Suchovich. Here. Mayor Recupero.
Here.
I am also here, and Dane Dice is here for Craig, and Mr. Fitch is also here.
Okay, this evening's meeting has to do with the road devastation and the danger zone at 2nd and Church. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Pitch.
Yes, so with the storms that we've had, the first one, there was a issue apparent on 2nd and Church. The manhole surcharged and caused some of the damage to the brick road. AJ and myself got a camera in the line to assess it at that point. There was a large amount of debris in the pipe. We could only get limited access to it and collected what information we could. Then several days later, another storm had hit us, at that point opening up the rather large sinkhole that's present there. We were able to gain access to the downstream end of the pipe by climbing through the culvert that encloses Indian Creek. It's clear at that end. Due to some of the other communities in the area getting hit a lot harder, we weren't able to schedule a camera until tomorrow to camera the rest of the line. Our hopes are from Church down to the culvert, the line is in okay shape to where we can just put a trenchless liner in it. We do know that somewhere just upstream of the pipe, we do have to have a dig repair. That appears to be where all the material from the sinkhole is going. And then in the initial inspection, you'll see in the one photo that I passed out, it's the terracotta line, and it's at the 122 foot mark. The pipe is collapsed about 60% there. So it's still allowing water through, but it's, at that point, it's collapsed too much to put a trenchless liner through it. So that happens to be about half. There's a upstream inlet at Wood Street. And then the next inlet's at 2nd Street. It's about halfway in between those two inlets that we'll have to repair that 60% collapse before we can line that section as well.
Matt, what size is that pipe?
30-inch.
Okay.
So with that,
These pictures, this is the top.
correct.
This is the bottom, same here and here.
Correct. And I didn't give the whole report because it's 18 pages long.
Right.
But as you can see in that bottom picture, the closer we got to the bottom of the pipe, the more full it became with material. At the time, we just thought it was material because of the storm. Then when the second storm hit and the sinkhole opened up, it was evident that it wasn't just material being carried into the pipe, that it was because of failure downstream, and that was the ground coming into the pipe there. We also have a issue on Selden. It's the old corrugated metal pipe. That's the other picture. The bottom 8 to 12 inches, and I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't get one for you. The bottom of the pipe is corroded out. And what happened there was enough flow that the water came out the bottom of the pipe and filled Conco's parking lot, and subsequently filled part of CXL's warehouse as well.
Should this be like this?
I put it on the copier wrong. So, I mean, that is the bottom of the pipe there, though.
I'll get them from Matt.
So my initial thought was maybe to do some trenchless repair there. So I reached out to a couple companies. I did get one response back. I have two more waiting to hear back from them. When I did get the first response back, it was a little bit higher than I anticipated, so I reached out to a couple contractors for dig repairs. as that line by CXL at its deepest is only about 8 foot deep. So it's not too hard to do a dig repair. I still only have one of each quote. So I did reach out. I should be receiving 3 of each method. As of right now, the first quote for the trenchless repair came in at $118,000.
Is that on Second Street?
That's Selden.
Selden.
The second, the other quote I got was for a dig repair, which came in at $84,000. So
The first one is a
trenchless.
To line it.
So with that technology, what they would have to do is they pour a grout to fill the void in the bottom of the pipe before they put the liner in. And it's the same process we've done on a lot of sanitary lines. So it's relatively easy, but they have to fix the invert first. So the company that did get their quote back to me already, they proposed filling it with grout. One of the other companies I spoke with, they are proposing just filling it with sand. So, because once the liner hardens, whatever material you'll put in there, it doesn't matter. It just needs to hold the liner in there while it's wet. So I'm hoping that number comes down some with the company that is gonna use the sand option. But also with the dig repair, I have 2 other quotes that I should be receiving in a day or so. So we hope that it's comes in competitively, but as of right now, it seems like the pipe on Selden is more along the lines of a dig and replace.
The one on Selden, is that gonna take care of both Conco and CXL?
Yeah, so where it comes across in it comes down the valley, goes into that structure that last year we did kind of a emergency spillway. Talking to both Conco and CXL, that spillway worked perfectly. When it overflowed, it flowed onto the road and then flowed into the inlets. But the pipe there makes about a 45-degree turn, and because the bottom was eroded out, the water took the path of least resistance, which was blowing out the side of the hillside, right into the side of their building. So that would take care of that option, and prevent more flooding for those.
Right.
So right now, it's just kind of wait until we have the quotes.
Both will do the same thing, the trenchless and the dig repair?
So the dig repair will completely replace the steel pipe with plastic pipe, which has a 100-year lifespan, if not more, on it. The trenchless repair will basically put a PVC liner inside of the metal pipe, so eventually the metal will corrode, but the PVC will remain. So both of them will get you relatively the same lifespan, the same service. At this point, it's more about just what the cost of each service is.
So I'm a little confused. I always thought that having to dig and replace would cost more than trenchless.
Well, so with those lining systems, the larger the pipe you get, the more expensive it is, the more specialized equipment they need. And the actual liner itself was only quoted at $77,000. But in order to grout the bottom of the pipe and clean it out and prepare it for the liner, that was another $30,000. So it's not so much the issue of the liner being more expensive, it's the preparing it to be lined.
So sometimes, even though it would seem that it'd be more expensive to actually dig up the road, in this case, it's less expensive.
Well, in this case, it's not actually in the road. It's off in the grass.
Okay,
And it starts only 4 foot deep and it ends only about 8 foot deep.
okay. Okay,
And there's one little stretch across CXL's parking lot that there would only be a small amount of asphalt repair. Other than that, it's yard restoration.
okay.
There's some, it's a little tight because it does run along CXL's, or Conco's building. So you have, whoever digs it has to be aware of turning their machine or whatnot, but it's not undoable that way.
Okay.
Matt, going back to Second Street, I know we have talked about paving from Wood Street down. And you said from Wood Street down, we are going to, we looked at that, right?
Yes,
From Wood
so
Street to Church Street?
the first time we cambered it, we were able to get from the inlet on Wood, or the manhole on Wood Street down to just 8 feet short of the manhole on Church, and that was due to all the sediment and debris in the pipe.
Okay,
Out of that, there was that one section that's about 10 foot long at 122 feet that would need a dig repair because it's 60% collapsed. Other than that, the pipe's in okay shape, but if we're gonna go that route, I would still suggest doing a full liner, and then we never have to worry about it.
now how far, we're only going 120 feet, we're not going all the way down to Verona Road, or?
No,
I mean,
so
Wildwood?
we would go to that 120 feet, we would have to dig, expose the pipe, put a new section of pipe in, and then line from manhole to manhole, which that section, I believe, was about 200 feet. And then from Church down to where the culvert is that it dumps in is about another 200 feet.
And where's that at, the culvert?
So it comes out in the valley from Shannon Road, and it basically cuts straight across Wildwood from Shannon Road, goes under the pickle factory, and then crosses Wildwood to where the empty grass lot is.
Yeah.
And then makes a turn and then follows the sidewalk
Well,
from
the
there.
one at the pickle factory, that's, wasn't that sanitary?
They're sanitary and storm.
Oh, they're both in there, okay,
Yeah.
I remember we had to replace
They're about
that.
10 feet apart width-wise, but they're both in there.
Isn't Shannon Road below the pickle factory?
No,
No.
Verona Road's below.
Shannon is the first road on Second on the right-hand side.
Okay, I have a question on, as far as, the cost on both. I mean, and we had this problem before with, Second Street where,
So this is where it crosses the road. Pickle factory would sit right here.
we had this problem before back in the 90s when we had that sanitary sewer, because you could see the new manhole, there was a
Right
new one
behind the
there.
building,
Right,
yeah.
and we're gonna replace the old one also, right? The one that's there now?
It's in the building.
No, not in the building, on Church Street, the brick one.
So what it appears is the line is collapsed right above the manhole. But because it's so deep, we'll probably have the whole manhole exposed anyways. So I would suggest
yeah.
at this time, let's get a precast one in there.
Right.
Because that's an old brick one.
That's probably 100 years
The-
old, if not more.
The guys can't even climb in it to do any type of maintenance or anything because the steps are corroded or whatnot. I suspect from the cameraing that we saw that the collapse and where all the material is going is within the first 10 feet upstream of that manhole, and it's 22 foot deep, so by the time you dig 22 foot deep, you're gonna have that whole manhole exposed anyways.
No, that makes a lot of sense. As far as cost, I mean, we have a lot of, as we all know, and we had this problem, like I said, back in the 90s with Penn Hills, coming into our system. Now, you're saying they're gonna go across Verona, or I keep saying Verona Road, Wildwood into that lot across the street?
No, that's just how
Oh, that's just how it goes?
That's how it
Okay,
runs.
Okay. All right, then let's get back to.
I don't have the exact location, but I do have some construction plans from the county from the 1940s. And from what I can tell, the line runs almost straight with Shannon Road, so it kind of crosses Second Street right there.
But as far as any type of compensation from Penn Hills for their water contributing into our system?
That is something that we could look into.
Because we had that problem in the 90s, and they basically kind of said, hey, that's your problem. And we had to, I don't want to say go after them, but we ended up having to get in our own attorney, John McPherson.
Yeah.
Harrison, I'm sorry, McPherson. And Penn Hills had Damien and DeLuca at the time, which was ours also. And I just don't want to run into that again. I mean, if we have the same attorney, they need to, without either one of us getting an attorney, it's not fair to Verona to do that again.
Yeah.
I mean, you're our attorney, if we, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it happened last time.
I think-
But there is new people in the board and everything, and things have changed, but we need to look into that. We do, both on Selden and Second Street, we have a lot of runoff coming from Penn Hills. And I think it's only fair that some type of percentage is looked into on both.
You should have looked into the sewer line then, the sanitary sewer line while you were there.
Well, we do have an agreement with Penn Hills for sanitary.
Well, I know this board wanted to raise the cost of the, they're coming into the borough, into Verona, the sanitary.
Recently, yeah.
I believe we recently did, within the past few years, raise that cost for the sanitary.
For the sanitary. They pay $18,000 a year for the flow, the sanitary flow from 360 homes, I think, off the top of
That
my
sounds
head.
about right, yeah.
And I don't mean to throw Dane on the spotlight, but is charging for downstream stormwater, is that a common practice?
Not particularly, but I mean, you can work it out if what's going on. Are there more stormwater systems needed? I mean, that's a discussion that has to be had with Penn Hills if there's issues.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that more systems or infrastructure is required. It's just the current infrastructure conveys their flow as well.
Well, is that what the mayor was saying, that this happened before? What was the rest?
We had a problem with the our sanitary sewer, and we did come to a agreement, they did pay some, I don't remember, it was back in the 90s,
So that-
early 90s.
That was just sanitary, nothing to do
Right.
with storm.
Right.
I haven't seen it a lot, but I mean, if an engineer's saying this is where it's coming from, this is the problem, I mean, then it just becomes a dispute between two landowners in regards to stormwater.
It's something we can definitely talk to them
Their
about.
water's definitely coming into our system though.
Oh, correct.
And especially at Selden Avenue where that drain is, that you
Up on Fourth, it dumps off right there.
It comes right in, and they actually helped us clean it out and do stuff with that years ago because they knew that, all of their water's coming from 4th Street.
Yeah, and
We don't own 4th Street, and that culvert, comes straight from 4th Street into there on Selden Avenue.
yeah, on Second, I'd have to trace it back. I know some of their inlets are tied into Church and tied into Wood. I don't know to what extent, but I would definitely agree that over on 4th Street, they definitely combine a lot more storm. I believe they have a 36-inch pipe
Well,
over
wouldn't they be
there.
on South and 2nd Street also? Because wouldn't it come, a lot of that come down that way from South Avenue and Penn Hills? Or would that go straight down south?
I'd have to,
Yeah.
I know our system and I have mapping of our system, so it's definitely something that I can check into. I'm
I
just
I
not
think
sure
it's
of
worth
the
checking
routing.
into. I mean, they are dumping into our system.
And I've talked to Scott, their manager, and they're pretty open to conversation, even with the paving this year.
Yeah.
I approached them and they were pretty reasonable. So I think it's something that we could definitely talk to them about and see where the conversation goes.
Okay.
That map that you showed me, Wildwood coming down to the left-hand side of the map, isn't that coming down onto ARB
So
on that map?
starting where Second comes out onto Wildwood, there is a 24-inch pipe that runs up in the Penn Hills that collects some inlets. When it gets out in front of the pickle factory, that's where the culvert comes down from the old Indian Creek.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the map. On the left-hand side of the map, I think, as Wildwood comes down.
So the blue line is what used to be Indian Creek. That is now, from about this point back here, is all piped. It flows across Wildwood here, and then it no longer goes back, what used to be the old Dodge Jeep dealer. It used to actually flow behind their building. It no longer does. It actually flows under the sidewalk in a culvert. That was part of the culvert that we repaired 2 years ago at 500 Wildwood. It then gets down to the other car dealer, Benny Doherty's, crosses his parking lot, actually opens up again and flows like a stream until it gets down to the old Valvoline station. And then it's piped from there to the river. And AJ and I found a manhole and we walked up it. That culvert as a whole is in immaculate shape. There's nothing wrong with the culvert. It's just our 30-inch pipe that comes down 2nd Avenue that ties into it.
Oh, we gotta do what we gotta do.
So we do have the camera scheduled for tomorrow. From what I can see on the downstream side, looking in the manhole, it looks like the flow in the manhole is about the same flow that comes out the downstream side. So barring any major collapses like on the other section of pipe, if we can just get in there and line it, the only quote I have so far is $215 a foot for 30-inch lining. So the lining would be right around $94,000 to line that downstream part
The Second Street one.
of 2nd Street. Or, I'm sorry, that's the total 440 feet. So that would get, that 94,000 would get us from Wood Street to the culvert lining. I then estimated that we would have the one spot repair at the 122 feet and the other spot repair at the manhole, estimating those to be approximately 15,000 each, just due to the depth of them. They're the shallowest one's probably about 12 feet, the other one's 22 feet. We did have a contractor out there that we've worked with before, Mr. Pampina. Even his largest machine is not capable of digging 22 foot deep. He'd have to rent even a larger machine. And then if we talk about replacing a manhole at that depth, we're looking in the range probably between 125 and 150.
Well, like you said, I would highly recommend replacing that manhole.
I would too.
Yeah, I mean, you're there.
It's so old.
It is. I've seen it.
And fingers crossed, that's best case scenario. If we get the camera in there tomorrow and there's a section of the downstream pipe that needs a dig repair, no one really knows at what angle it flows, but we know when it ties into the culvert, it's roughly 30 foot deep, which is insanely deep for any type of excavation. So when I was in the culvert, I could see approximately 60 feet up the line, and from the 60 feet I could see looked rather good shape. So I'm hoping it just has some minor debris from the sinkhole washing into it, but we'll know more information tomorrow. And Jerry and I have been in talks with rough budget numbers and everything. I'm reaching out to Holbein, seeing if they'll hold their asphalt price for next year, and we'll just push back the paving by 1 year. And the 100,000 we were gonna spend on paving will go to fixing the storm sewer this year. So that repair should not cost us too much more out of pocket unless we run into something drastic during the cammering. And then the only one that we would really have to worry about is the Selden Avenue one.
Matt, that Selden Avenue one, since it's not gonna impede any roads, would it make sense to save the $24,000 and have it dug up and replaced?
Oh, at this point, I'm definitely recommending that. And I've reached out to 3 lining companies to get their quotes. Like I said, I only have the one back so far. Once I get the others back, I'll see if they are any cheaper. But even if they come in the exact same price of trenchless versus a dig repair, I'd recommend a dig repair, because putting a brand new pipe versus putting a liner in a pipe that's gonna continue the road is always gonna be the better option.
Okay. Especially since we gotta worry about the 2nd Street one.
And I did,
Money for that.
I reached out to all the normal kind of contractors that do this type of work, and when we did the bypass project, we used Mr. Tomanello's contractor, which actually gave us a much better price than what some of the regular contractors do. So I spoke with him today to see, and he's interested in it. I'm probably gonna meet with him on Thursday to look at it, to see what type of numbers he'll put at it. So, well, at this point, it's just a matter of getting quotes in so we know which way to go.
Okay.
And I would ask Dane, at this juncture, especially Second Street, I think we can deem it an emergency repair. So as long as we have the quotes in the documentation, we could move forward with awarding it.
All right, emergency repairs, pretty high threshold to meet, so I'm not totally familiar with Second Street. I mean, is it, I heard the word sinkhole used. I mean,
We have a hole that is closing one side street down and is currently about 10 foot deep and 20 foot by 20 foot wide.
wow. Okay, so the standards seriously impair the health or welfare of the public. So I would say in this situation, you should simply draft an opinion stating that, you know, this is an imminent emergency, there's a potential for people to get hurt, things like that.
Okay.
Craig can then write a legal opinion letter. We'll keep both those things in the file, and then, like you said, we can just award it immediately.
Okay.
A car drove into it last night.
Yeah, a car drove into it last night.
Yeah, then
He fled the scene, so
Yeah, he fled the scene.
he left his car?
There was
he left the car.
There was a fence around it.
And we did take safety precautions. We have barriers. We actually have a construction fence around it. So, I mean, it's not like there's just a hole there, so.
Signs. Yeah, there's everything.
Okay,
So, can I just talk math with you for a minute? Now, I know you said that 84,000 for the dig repair, but if I went between these two and approximated for easy math and said, averaged it at 100, and took the worst case scenario here of 150, the most we would pay out would be 250, but we have 100 available to us from what we were going to use to pave Second,
Correct.
which would make it 150, but it would really be less than that. Probably, I mean, it's still a significant amount of money, is
It is.
what I'm saying.
It is.
But maybe it's not really 150, let's say we're putting out about 125,000 between the two streets. Does
It's
that?
not in the budget, correct.
Yeah,
Right.
best case scenario.
Yeah. Are there any grants or anything out there that are possible to get?
You can't wait.
Well,
Can you get grants after the fact?
I made a phone call today. I did not get called back. If everyone remembers, we received
Yeah, he
the
did say it.
2018 PA Small Water and Sewer, which was for sanitary lining. We did not bid that project out yet. If I remember correctly, it was for around $80,000. So I did make a phone call there to DCD to let them know we had some emergencies pop up. This fully falls under the scope of what an eligible project is. I just don't know at this point if they're capable of changing it that much because it was awarded to us for sanitary. I don't know if we're able to change it to a storm, but I did make that phone call to see if we have that option.
We've also been, Mark and I have also been in conference calls with Allegheny County Emergency Services. We were not the only municipality that was hit. Honestly, we were probably the least hit of of Penn Hills, Plum, and Oakmont. But we've been in these calls. There's possibility that we might end up getting some state and federal funding at some point to reimburse. It doesn't look real likely. There's thresholds that the county has to meet $4.5 million worth of damage. The state has to meet 18.5, and I don't think we're there. But they're still working on trying to get it. A lot of the other communities had residents that were affected, displaced residents, homes that were really bad. Fortunately, we didn't have that. Most of our damage was the road and CXL and Conco. So fortunately, we didn't have a whole lot to add to that. But unfortunately, $4.5 million is a lot of money.
Right, so, but there's a small possibility.
There's a small possibility
That we
we
could get either
can-
from the county after the fact or switch it to storm sewer.
I think-
No guarantee, but
Yeah,
maybe
I think
possible.
that's a very slim possibility, but I wanted to at least ask
We're trying.
if it was an option.
Right.
Especially the fact that the communities got hit so hard.
Right.
I didn't know if there was any leeway or not.
But you don't know till you ask.
Exactly.
Right. And then my other question is, do we have any, I mean, I know you haven't accepted a bid, but are people talking about how soon could they start? How long would it take?
So I've talked to a couple lining companies about second and kind of expressed how it has a road shut down and everything. Depending on their schedules, you're looking anywhere from 2 weeks to a month for them to mobilize. It also depends on the product availability. A lot of that lining occurs on 8 to 15 inch pipes because it's sanitary based. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have 30-inch supply lying around the shop, so they might have to order it from the manufacturer. So there's a lot of variables there, but I would definitely make sure that before we awarded it, it was something that they were putting a priority on and not just saying, oh, I have this project coming up.
Matt, I'm trying to get a handle on the cost here. Selden Avenue seems to be pretty much waiting for those other two bids, somewhere between 84 and 118,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that some of the other contractors I reached out to might come in lower. The one quote I did get was from Mr. Pampina. He does a lot of work for Plum and Penn Hills, and I know he is rather busy with all this storm work as well. So I'm not saying that he didn't give us a good price, but he's also very busy as well. So I'm hoping maybe to catch another contractor that maybe needs some work and can give us a better price.
Right. 2nd Street and Church has me a little bit more confused. You had mentioned 94,000 from Wood Street to the culvert.
So from Wood Street to Church Street is approximately 240 feet.
Right.
From Church Street to where it empties into the culvert is approximately 200 feet.
Okay.
So that's 440 feet. The only lining quote I received so far for 30-inch pipe was $215 a foot. So that 94,000 would be best case scenario, we just go in, we line it. But we already know from the video we do already have, we have one dig repair at the manhole where the sinkhole is, and we have that other dig repair at the pitcher at the 120 feet. I estimated both those dig repairs to be approximately $30,000 total. And then probably about 10 to 15 for a manhole. So that puts us in the 125, and then some contingency, 125 to 150. And that's more or less best case scenario. If we get the camera in tomorrow and the downstream pipe from Church to the culvert is just throw a liner in it. If we have to dig it, it depends on where and how deep.
Okay.
Yeah, just so it's clear, if you can't line that pipe, this could be hundreds of thousands.
But we also have options too, where depending on how bad the existing pipe is, we may not have to go that deep. We could run a brand new system, only 5 foot deep, and then the only thing we would have to do is pump grout into the old system to prevent any future sinkholes. Regardless, it's gonna have a cost to it, but pumping grout versus digging 30 foot deep is a lot cheaper. Just at this point, without having that camera information, I can't put real good numbers to it.
And the camera's scheduled for tomorrow.
Correct.
Tomorrow morning.
What time? Do you know what time?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I talked to AJ today, he just said it was tomorrow.
Okay.
Yesterday, we had an ordinance meeting, and after I heard all of this information that we're hearing again, I said to Mark, I know we have insurance. I said, don't you think it might be good, it wouldn't hurt if we asked Ewing?
I did.
And he said he would look into it right away, he thought it was a good idea.
I did. I called Kevin yesterday. We do not have any coverage for any sewer lines. Anything that's a natural disaster like that, we don't have any coverage. He said if somebody crashed into it and did the damage, then yes. But just a storm, no.
No.
We can't say that car that was laying in the last night.
I told Jack, as soon as he texted
I
me this
wanted to
morning, I
say
said,
that.
that driver did it.
What'd you do?
You won't tell Williams?
But Honestly, with the sinkhole and everything that happened, and even the pipe at CXL, this is all stuff that has come to light with these large storms, but it's all things that didn't necessarily happen because of the storm. That picture I showed you of the pipe being 60% collapsed, that's been on its way for, who knows, 15, 20 years. It's been slowly creeping like that. So it sucks that it's happening all at one time, but these aren't necessarily issues that the storm caused. The storm is just pointing out the flaws that we already had.
Stalled infrastructure.
Yeah.
So what's our next step tonight then? Where do we go from now? Do we just wait and see what the bids come in as, or do we
I think
make some type of a motion pending? I don't know,
I think at least for the Second Avenue, I can write the opinion letter and provide it to Craig. And then before we would make any decision, I would at least email the board and let them know what the price was.
It would seem to me that in awarding that, you would need some sort of a motion to actively award it to this person. So.
Can we do a phone vote?
We could do a phone vote.
Is that not good?
I think with the sunshine law, you would really need the bids in hand and then have a quick emergency meeting to award it to whoever it's going to if you don't know who the lowest bidder is now.
Okay.
Even though, you're talking about the Selden Avenue, the one that's not an emergency.
Talking about second.
The emergency one, we can just award that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that's not an emergency, we'd have to have an emergency meeting and have that motion.
Correct.
so second, we can just award.
We have to.
Right, that's what I'm down.
Because it's an emergency, we can award that without a.
If it's the emergency one, potentially, you can just award that based on the volition of the board. You know, an emergency contract has the potential to be something where you can't even have a meeting like this. You need to hire somebody right now that night. So you can do that. If you get the opinion letter written, we know who it's going to, we can do that.
And I would agree. At this point in time, we don't know who it's going to just because we don't have all the information yet as to what course of repair we need.
Okay.
As of tomorrow, we will have that. As soon as I have that information, I've already talked to contractors to get quotes from them. And then as soon as the quotes come in and we know what plan of action we have, I can proceed with awarding it to the lowest bidder.
Okay.
And then as far as Selden is, our next meeting would be
August
13th. By then, I would have all the quotes, and I think we could just motion at that meeting. It wouldn't go through the formal bidding process, but I'm gonna have 3 quotes trenchless and 3 quotes dig repair.
For the one that's not an emergency?
Yes.
Well, and you said that, but the price on that's gonna be what?
Right now, it's around 80,000.
If it's not an emergency, I don't know how we get away from going through the normal bidding procedures.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at it as it's not an emergency in the fact that there's not a sinkhole, people aren't falling into it. But if we get another heavy rain, it's flooding businesses out.
That's getting pretty close to an emergency. I mean, if you're willing to put that in an opinion letter, and I can even send you the legal language that it's an emergency and imperils the health and safety of the public, things of that nature, I think we're getting there.
Okay.
That one's not as drastic though.
I know the owners of the warehouses would be more than willing to sign off on it as well. The one owner, it's a 50,000 square foot building. He had 1.5 feet of water in the building.
I mean, if you're willing to say, if we get another rainstorm, this is going to flood out and imperil the safety of people because there's 2 feet of water in their building, then I think we're just about at an emergency.
Okay.
As fast as water comes down sometime, he can't get his employees out of there fast enough, maybe, you know?
Especially that valley.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to clarify that the Second Street qualifies under the definition since it's been like that for a couple of weeks now. I mean, because you just said, Dane, you know, oh, it's an emergency, it has to be taken care of tonight. But this has been sitting here for 2 weeks, so I'm a little confused.
Well, car drove in it last night, and if another rainstorm happens, more of that road's gonna collapse.
It's been like that for a week.
And I said that in regards to going outside the normal awarding of a contract.
Right, and that's what we're planning on doing for Second Street.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be something that has to be remedied this instant. It has to
Okay.
be something that imperils the health and safety of the public.
So then
enough.
both of them kind of sound to me like they're of equal merit from impairing the safety of the residents and the surrounding businesses.
Yeah, correct. And I use that example to say it needs done tonight, that instead of having council come back to award the bids, that's an example of a situation where you're not going to have council award any bids. You're going to say, this needs done tonight, we're going to do it right now. You know, that might be a contract you enter into at 2 AM.
Right, I get that, but that's not what we have here.
But yeah, but based on what Matt said, it sounds like both of these are emergencies. If we're worried about people being injured, that's really the big thing. I don't know how someone can argue it's not an emergency if we're saying
Okay.
there could be 2 feet
I
of
just
water.
wanted to be really clear about it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think comparing it to other situations around town, when we had the Parker Street,
Investigates.
Parker Street? No, Parker Street.
Yeah, that was
Parker, we had that sanitary repair.
Oh, yeah,
So we kind of knew that night, the pipe was full of water, there was no way of cameraing it, the fire truck started sinking into the road.
Oh, yeah.
We kind of knew that night we had to dig, and we got the contractor out that night. These ones, yes, they're emergency, they present a public safety issue. We've made the areas as safe as we can, but we don't necessarily know what course of action to take to repair them yet until we have the proper information. So once we have that information tomorrow, we can move forward with the proper repair.
but someone can be keeping us informed as to what's happening.
Most
as it's
definitely.
happening.
Before I would even tell the contractor, I would make sure everyone was emailed and knew what was going on.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion to allow Matt to move forward to secure the bids and to award it to the lowest bidder for emergency purposes for residents and businesses.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Conti. Are there any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Matt, thanks for your hard work. Okay, can I have a motion for adjournment to exec session? And we don't have to return.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Suchovich, second by Mr. Conti. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.